My wife cheated with her boss, and now she's trying to claim half of our $750, $0 house and a $200, $0 inheritance. But I just found out she's secretly been draining our joint account of $50, $0 a month into her sister's offshore account. How do I even prove she's been stealing? And can I still fight for everything she's trying to take? Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy whose wife would cheat on him, let alone with her boss. Honestly, I always thought Sarah was the perfect wife, smart, beautiful, ambitious. We had a solid life, or so I thought. We bought a $750, $0 house a few years back, and I was proud of how we built our little empire together. Then, out of nowhere, everything started to feel off. Small things at first. She was more secretive with her phone, disappearing for hours without explanation, and suddenly she was wearing a new perfume I'd never smelled before. Nothing pointed directly to cheating, but I could feel something was wrong. One night I decided to check her phone. I know trust is supposed to be the foundation of a relationship, but after months of her acting distant, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. I found texts. Not just innocent flirtations, but outright conversations with her boss, Mark, that crossed lines. They were talking about meetings at his place, private dinners, and even explicit talk about sex. The worst part, she lied about everything, said she was working late or out with friends, but the messages told a different story. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. All those nights she claimed she was working late, she was actually with Mark, probably screwing him. The moment I saw the messages, my stomach dropped. My mind raced. How could I have been so blind? I always thought she loved me, that we were in this together. Turns out she's been lying to my face for months. I decided I had to confront her. That night, I waited until she came home from work. She looked annoyed, like she'd been caught doing something she didn't want to explain. I asked her straight out, "Who is Mark? Why are you texting him so much? Are you sleeping with him?" Her face twisted into a sneer and she rolled her eyes like I was some kind of idiot. "You're crazy," she snapped. "It's just work stuff, you're overthinking it." But I wasn't buying it. I told her I'd seen the messages, that I knew she was lying. Her eyes flashed with anger and she started to get defensive. "You're just jealous," she spat. "Mark been a good boss and I've been doing my job. Maybe you should focus on your own work instead of snooping around." That was the moment I realized how manipulative she was. She was trying to turn it around, make me look like the crazy one, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I felt sick, betrayed, and furious all at once. How could she do this to us? To me? I loved her, or at least I thought I did, and now I was faced with this devastating truth. This was just the beginning. I knew I'd have to dig deeper, find out just how far she'd gone and what she was trying to hide. The thing is, I had no idea how to even start proving her infidelity, much less what it would mean for our life. But what I did know, I wasn't going to let her lie her way out of this one. Not anymore. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. My mind kept circling around her lies and the fact that she'd been sneaking around behind my back with her boss. The betrayal hit deep, but what cut even worse was realizing how she'd been manipulating me all along. She's always been good at lying, at pretending everything's fine until she gets what she wants. Now, I had proof, screenshots of the messages and her secret bank account activity. I started digging further, and that's when I found something that made my blood run cold. I pulled up our joint bank account online, expecting to see some normal transactions. But what I found was anything but normal. She'd been draining about 50 grand a month into her sister's offshore account, an account I'd never even heard of before. I mean, $50,000 a month, that's not small change, that's a full-blown scheme. I couldn't believe it. I'd always thought we were in this together, building something solid, and now it looked like she was siphoning off money for herself and her family. I wondered, was this part of her plan all along? Or did she just get greedy once she realized she had me fooled? I immediately started collecting evidence. I downloaded bank statements, looked into her recent wire transfers, and tracked the offshore account. Every transaction was labeled as consulting, gifts, or miscellaneous, but I knew better. I hired a private investigator to confirm what I suspected. She was stealing from us, feeding her sister and herself with our hard-earned money. The betrayal felt even deeper now. This wasn't just infidelity, it was theft. And it was happening on a scale that could destroy everything I'd worked for. As I pieced this together, I felt this burning rage. How could she do this? How could she lie about everything, about her work, her fidelity, and then turn around and drain our account? I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I was prepared. I couldn't just accuse her blindly. Needed proof, undeniable proof. I wanted her to see I wasn't some naive husband who missed the signs. I was onto her game. I set up a meeting with my lawyer, and we started talking about how to handle the legal side of things. She was trying to claim half of the house, worth $750, $0, plus a $200, $0 inheritance that I was set to receive soon. She knew she'd been caught, but her attitude was still defiant, like she was trying to play the victim. The more I looked into her plans, the angrier I got. She's always been bitchy and manipulative, but now she was downright ruthless. She kept insisting she deserved her share, claiming she'd helped build the house, that she was entitled to half because of all the years she'd sacrificed. Yeah, right. She'd been cheating, stealing, lying, and now she was trying to take everything I worked for. It was like a punch to the gut every time I thought about it. I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to protect what was mine. I couldn't just sit back and let her walk away with everything. I had to fight, and I would. But first, I had to figure out how to prove her thefts in court and what legal options I had to stop her from bleeding me dry further. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She'd been lying for months, maybe years. Her whole personality changed, more aggressive, more entitled. It was like she was trying to manipulate her way out of this mess, and I'd be damned if I let her get away with it. I knew I'd have to play dirty if I wanted to win this fight. I started gathering all the evidence I could: text messages, bank records, her online activity. I even hired a forensic accountant to trace the money she'd stolen. The betrayal was almost too much to handle, but I refused to give up. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done, and I wanted to keep everything I had worked so hard for. This wasn't just about money or a house. It was about my dignity, my future, and the fact that she tried to ruin everything for her own gain. By the time I had all the pieces in place, I felt like I was ready to blow the whole thing open. I had the bank statements, the offshore account details, the private investigators' reports. Everything pointed to one conclusion. Sarah had been draining us dry, 50 grand a month, straight into her sister's offshore account, while she was busy lying about her work trips and her business meetings with Mark. It was so blatant now I couldn't believe I'd missed the signs for so long. I'd trusted her completely. I thought we were building a future, not setting ourselves up for a disaster. The worst part was her reaction when I confronted her with the evidence. She was caught off guard at first, but then her bitchy attitude kicked in full force. "You're overreacting," she snapped, trying to brush it off. "It's just money. It's not a big deal. You're making a mountain out of a molehill." I looked at her, incredulous. How could she be so callous? She was stealing from us, lying about her affair, and she was acting like it was nothing. She tried to spin it, saying she needed the money for emergencies, or that her sister needed help. But I knew better. I knew she'd been planning this for a while, and she was just trying to save face. I decided I needed to be more strategic. I called my lawyer and we went over the options. I wanted to stop her from draining any more money, and I wanted to protect what was rightfully mine: our house, the inheritance, everything. The lawyer explained that I could file for an injunction to freeze her accounts and start legal proceedings for fraud and theft. But I also had to be careful. She was claiming she deserved half the house, and she'd probably try to spin her affair as some kind of contribution to our marriage. That's when I realized I had to prepare for a fight, not just in court, but emotionally as well. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my dignity and my future. While I was doing all this, Sarah's attitude only got more confrontational. She kept insisting she was the victim, that I was paranoid, that she'd never cheat on me, that I was just jealous and insecure. She threw tantrums, yelled, even accused me of spying on her because I was possessive. But I had enough. I told her that I knew everything, the affair, the money drain, the lies, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I told her I was considering divorce and that I'd fight to keep what was ours. Her face twisted into something ugly when I said that. She knew she'd been caught, but she was still trying to save herself at any cost. The next few days were a whirlwind. I hired a forensic accountant to dig deeper into her financials, and I started preparing my case. I also set up a meeting with her sister who, surprisingly, was more cooperative than I thought. She admitted she'd been receiving the money, claiming she needed it for her kids, but she refused to give any more details. I knew I had to think carefully about how to use this information, how to turn her own lies against her in court. Meanwhile, Sarah kept trying to spin things, calling me paranoid, possessive, and crazy. She accused me of trying to control her, of not trusting her. But I knew the truth now, and I wasn't backing down. What's crazy is how she still acts like she's the victim in all this. She's bitchy, dismissive, and keeps playing the victim card, saying I'm the one who's ruining everything. But I see through her now. I see her for what she really is, a liar, a cheater, a thief. And if she thinks she can walk away with half of our house and our inheritance, she's got another thing coming. I've got the evidence, I've got the law on my side, and I'm ready to fight for what's rightfully mine. This isn't just about money anymore. It's about standing up for myself and making sure she pays for the betrayal she's inflicted. I don't know how this will end, but I do know one thing. I won't be the sucker who gets played and loses everything I worked so hard to build. At this point, I was deep into planning my next move. The evidence was stacking up, and I was starting to see how far Sarah was willing to go to keep her lies hidden. I had the proof of her affair, the bank records showing the $50, $0 monthly drain, and her sister's reluctant confession. Still, I knew that going to court would be a battle. She was a master manipulator, and she'd do everything possible to spin her story and try to claim half of everything, including the house and inheritance. That's when I realized I needed to be more strategic, outsmart her at her own game. I decided to hire a top-notch lawyer who specialized in financial fraud and divorce cases. I needed someone who could help me navigate the legal minefield. We discussed my options thoroughly. One thing was clear. I could file for an immediate injunction to freeze her accounts and prevent her from draining any more money. I also had enough evidence to pursue a fraud case. She'd lied about her activities, stolen our money, and cheated on me. My lawyer told me to prepare for a long fight, but I was ready. I was sick of feeling like a fool, and I wanted to make sure she paid for the damage she'd done. Meanwhile, Sarah's attitude was growing more hostile. She kept insisting she was the victim, that I was paranoid, that she'd never cheated or stolen anything. She kept crying, throwing tantrums, trying to make me feel guilty. "You're just insecure," she'd say, "or you don't trust me," like that was supposed to make me back off. But I saw through her act. I knew she was lying, and I knew she was trying to spin her way out of this mess. Every lie she told only made me more determined to fight back. I knew I had to gather more concrete evidence, things she might have missed or details that could turn the tide in court. One of the biggest shocks came when I confronted her about the offshore account again. Everything, of course. "That's just some scam," she said, rolling her eyes. "You're making things up. I don't know what you're talking about." But I had the bank statements, the wire transfer records, the forensic accountant's reports. I showed her the evidence, and her face went pale. She tried to deny it, but she was caught red-handed. That was the moment I realized she was prepared to lie her way out of anything, even the theft of our hard-earned money. That's when I decided I had to take legal action, and fast. I also started talking to a divorce attorney, because I knew that if I didn't act quickly, she'd try to claim everything. Her share of the house, the inheritance, even some of the money she'd stolen from us. The lawyer explained that I had a solid case for fraud and theft, especially with the bank records and offshore account details. But I also had to be careful. She'd probably try to spin her affair as some kind of contribution to our marriage, or claim that she deserved half because of her sacrifices. That's why I started working on a detailed timeline, documenting her lies, her financial schemes, and her affair. I wanted everything laid out clearly so there was no room for her to wiggle out of it. In the meantime, Sarah's bitchy attitude only grew worse. She kept insisting she was innocent, that I was just jealous and insecure. She accused me of spying on her because I didn't trust her. "You're just paranoid," she snapped, with that nasty smirk she always gets when she's trying to manipulate me. But I knew better. I knew the truth, and I was tired of her acting like she was the victim. The more she lied, the more determined I became to fight for my rights. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, not without a fight. I was prepared to go all the way to court to prove her guilt and to keep what's mine. This was no longer just about the house or the money. It was about standing up for myself against her lies and betrayal. And I was done being the sucker who got played. By now, I was fully immersed in the legal and financial battle. Every day brought new surprises, more lies, more manipulation, but also more evidence that I could use. I had the forensic accountant digging into every transaction, uncovering patterns of theft that I knew would be impossible for her to deny. I also hired a private investigator to follow her, just to confirm her whereabouts during those supposed business trips. The PI confirmed she was meeting Mark, spending nights at his place, and even visiting some shady hotels. It all added up to a picture I couldn't ignore anymore. Sarah's attitude grew even more hostile. She started accusing me of controlling her, of trying to ruin her reputation. "You're just desperate," she spat one day during a heated argument. "You think you can throw me out and take everything. You're just a jealous, insecure little man." Her words stung, but I knew better. I knew her game now. She was trying to turn everyone against me to make herself look like the victim, but I didn't care. I had the evidence, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. One thing I didn't expect was how quickly she tried to turn her family against me. Her sister, who'd been receiving the stolen money, started acting distant. Sarah told her I was crazy and trying to ruin her sister's reputation. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, but I had to find a way to prove the theft in court. I also started to realize that her entire network was working against me. Her friends, her family, even some of her colleagues. It was like fighting an uphill battle, but I refused to back down. Meanwhile, I prepared all my legal documents. I filed for a temporary restraining order to freeze her accounts and prevent her from draining any more money. I also filed for divorce, citing infidelity, fraud, and financial misconduct. I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail, so I was collecting every piece of evidence I could: screenshots of her affair, bank statements, wire transfer records, witness testimonies. I even reached out to some of her former colleagues, hoping they'd testify about her shady dealings. The whole situation made me sick to my stomach. I loved her once, but now I saw her for what she truly was: a manipulative, greedy, dishonest woman who'd do anything to keep what she wanted. Her response to all this was predictable. She ramped up her bitchy attitude, calling me names, accusing me of trying to control her, of being paranoid. "You're just insecure," she said, with that nasty smirk. "You're losing your mind." But I knew better. I was just tired of her lies, tired of her pretending everything was fine until she could screw me over. I told her straight up that I had all the evidence, that I was going to fight her in court, and that she couldn't lie her way out of this one. That's when she really lost it. She yelled, cursed, and threatened to ruin me. But I didn't flinch. I knew I had the upper hand now, and I was ready to see this through to the end. I kept telling myself I wasn't just fighting for money or the house. I was fighting for my dignity. I'd been by her betrayal, and it hurt more than I can put into words. But I was also learning to stand up for myself, to take control of a situation I once thought I was helpless in. The coming court date felt like the final showdown, and I was determined to make sure she paid for what she'd done. I didn't care if she called me a villain or a jealous husband. What mattered was that I had the truth, and I was going to use it to protect what's mine. I just hoped I'd come out of this stronger, because right now I felt like I'd been crushed under the weight of her lies. But I wasn't about to let her win, not without a fight. The court date finally arrived, and I could feel the weight of everything I'd uncovered pressing down on me. All the evidence, her stolen money, the affair, the offshore accounts, was laid out clearly. I had witnesses, bank statements, and expert testimonies. Sarah, of course, showed up with that bitchy smirk, trying to act innocent, but her eyes betrayed her. She knew she was cornered, and her usual manipulative attitude was replaced with a mixture of desperation and fury. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer laid out the case, and I watched Sarah's face twist in anger and denial every time I presented a new piece of proof. When it was her turn to speak, she tried her usual tactics: denials, accusations, playing the victim. "This is all a setup," she claimed, her voice trembling with rage. "He's just jealous, trying to ruin me because I'm successful. I never cheated, I never stole a penny." But the evidence was overwhelming. The bank records proved she'd been draining our account, the offshore account showed the transfers, and the messages with Mark confirmed her affair. Her lies crumbled under the weight of truth. After hours of testimony, the judge finally made a ruling. She awarded me full custody of the house, valued at over $750, $0, and ordered Sarah to pay back every cent she'd stolen, plus punitive damages. The judge also granted me a restraining order, barring her from contact or trying to claim anything else. The look on her face was priceless, part shock, part fury. Her whole facade of being the innocent victim was shattered. I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion, knowing I'd finally fought for what was right. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Sarah was furious, but legally she was done. She had no choice but to accept the court's decision. She tried to spin it as some kind of conspiracy, but her words sounded hollow. Her family and friends started to distance themselves once they saw her true colors, and her reputation took a hit. I moved out of the house, got a new place, and started rebuilding my life. The financial damage was significant, but at least I knew I was free from her toxic grip. Looking back, I realize how much I learned from this nightmare. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. I also learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty to protect what's yours. It's not just about the money or the house. It's about standing up against someone who tried to ruin everything I worked for. I still feel the sting of her betrayal, but I also feel stronger for having faced it head on. I'm rebuilding my life now, more cautious, more aware. And I hope anyone else going through something similar learns that no matter how deep the betrayal, honesty and perseverance can help you come out on the other side.